the largest Bitcoin gathering in Europe, larger than Bitcoin Amsterdam. The ambition is for us to have 10,000 people. And it's an international conference held in English. And why in Prague? That's because the first Bitcoin conference in the world happened in Prague in 2011. Max Kaiser was there, and he sometimes repeats that on Twitter, that I'm here in 2011 having a talk about Bitcoin, and that was in Prague. So this is sort of back to the roots after 12 years. The largest Bitcoin gathering in Europe is going to happen in June in Prague.
Welcome to One Love Bitcoin. I'm your host, Dred, and welcome back. My goal is to go around the world and talk to one Bitcoiner from every country and learn a thing or two along the way. This week, we're going to be going to Czech Republic, or Czechia, as they call it. And we're going to be speaking with Josef Têtek, a Bitcoiner and a podcaster in Czech Republic that also works for Trezor. We talked about Czech Republic as a country, the center of Europe, and Prague, the center of the Czech Republic. So Prague is like the heart of Europe, basically. And we talked about a lot of different things, ranging from self-custody, the awareness of the Czech people. The Czech people are very, very well aware of Bitcoin. And I'm so happy to hear that there is a place in Europe that not only the people, but the governments, the banks, everybody seems to have a bit of understanding as to what Bitcoin is and what it means for humanity. If you're in the Czech Republic, you can check out Trezor. They create amazing hardware wallets, and General Bytes, they do other products, ATMs, etc. And also, that's where Slush Pool is, and Brainspool. So if you're a miner, that's where you can get a lot of your mining firmware. But anyway, Fulljoy this one, people. And as usual, one love.
In the prison industrial complex, Ingersoll houses for green projects. My grandfather was the connect, uncle the muscle. My father's ambition was committed to the hustle. The everyday struggle is a catch-22. Contribute to the genocide or you could die too. Survival of a few, to never say what you won't do if that bitch poverty come for you. Many lessons I learned, my respect was all earned. Blocks I burned without a lot of concern. But when the court is adjourned and the gavel holds your fate, you realize brutal and beautiful shared the same face. We shared the same place, a good 4 square blocks. In a box of cracking cops trying not to get shot. Maybe make it out the pot before the lid is on top. I'd rather rot than to not buy my freedom, chase the guap.
Said it's brutal and it's beautiful. The irony of it, right? Okay. You're capable of doing any of this other than how you knew it. And anything other than my pursuance of a crown, be it now or a day from. Tag forever on new it and pass it to my same one, my new me. Cause truthfully, all this is inspired by inheritance. Get it so my son could coincide with how I left from it. Cause most of who you see up don't ever think to leave much. Train of thought, same way it was with who precede us. Someone signaling me up. No, I made believers out of all who saw it differently. All the shit they said to me became a never mind, and it inspired them to mimic me. But fuck if they define what I did for me. I did for me what I did for you. Took it to mean more and treated it like nothing else mattered as long as the beat on. Cause all of this could've turned into a different aim. It could've turned into my young and missing his place, but never that. Nah.
And tell me if I'm saying your name correctly, Josef Têtek, or Têtek?
Yeah, that's good.
It's Têtek.
It's
how do you say
it's Josef Têtek.
Têtek?
It's Têtek. There's like soft E. It's this E with a hook over it, and it makes the T like softer, so it's Têtek.
Oh, like a TH in English, kind of like Têtek.
Kind of, yeah.
Interesting. Josef Têtek. Welcome to One Love Bitcoin, Virgin. I'm glad to have you here. The first person from the Czech or Czechia. I don't know. See, I don't know how to say any of this stuff.
Yeah, so the full name of the country is Czech Republic, and it's shortened to Czechia. And the Czechia, that's like 10 years old, the term Czechia. Before that, it was very like informal to call the Czech Republic Czechia, but now it's formalized, so you can say Czechia.
Okay, Czech Republic, formerly Czech Republic, also Czechia. I realized it was like in dead center of Europe. Like there's Europe, and then there's the Czech Republic in center of Europe, and then there's Prague in the center of the Czech Republic. So it's like you're like dead center of civilization over there.
Right. We actually call Prague like the heart of Europe. That's very fitting.
So tell me about Czech Republic, but before that, tell me about Josef. Like, tell me who you are. Tell the people who you are, because hopefully a lot of people from Czech Republic will be listening and watching. So tell them who you are, tell them how you got into Bitcoin. What's your story?
Yeah, right. So if any people from Czech Republic are watching, they probably already know me because I run my own Bitcoin podcast that's in Czech. And I also wrote a book on Bitcoin that's called Bitcoin, the Separation of Money and State. It's not very original, the title, but it works. And yeah, so I've been doing like Bitcoin education, Bitcoin kind of stuff for, let's say, 5 years now, contributing to various magazines. First in Czech, then I started contributing to Bitcoin magazine in English. And for the past 2 years, I've been working for Trezor, advocating for Bitcoin, for self-custody, security, and privacy. And these topics are becoming ever more interesting and pressing, especially in the last couple of months. And finally, people are taking notes. They are finally waking up to the fact that you actually need to self-custody your Bitcoin. So Bitcoin self-custody, that's my topic. And also libertarianism, Austrian economics. That's what I sort of did before I discovered Bitcoin. I've been a big libertarian activist and writer and thinker before Bitcoin, and that basically led me to understand Bitcoin fairly early on.
I see. Yeah, a lot of people who come from Austrian economics seem to have almost a direct line of understanding to the true value of Bitcoin and the true impact that it's going to have. But the question I would have for you is around how you first realized Bitcoin was like what it is. Like what was your aha moment? What was your orange pilling moment?
Yeah, that's a good one. So honestly, I discovered Bitcoin without buying any in, I believe, 2011, because I heard someone explaining Bitcoin on an Econ Talk, an old economics podcast. And I thought, well, it sounds interesting, but I basically forgot about it like in a week because it sounded sort of like Liberty Reserve or eGold, and there were a lot of projects.
I remember eGold.
That sounded it sounded like Bitcoin back then, around 2010. And
high yield investment products, right? I call them.
Yeah, and like eGold was legit. Liberty Reserve wasn't that legit. That the author behind Liberty Reserve was sentenced to 20 years for money laundering, and then I sort of kept on running into Bitcoin. I heard about WikiLeaks accepting Bitcoin in 2011. I remember reading interviews with Dread Pirate Roberts from Silk Road. I remember Russ Ulbricht's trial, and that was crazy. And I thought when Silk Road was busted and Mt. Gox collapsed, I thought that was basically the end of Bitcoin, and I still didn't own any back then. So I was thinking like, okay, it's good that I didn't invest anything, because it's like Liberty Reserve and e-gold, it just collapses under its own weight, or it's busted in the end by the Feds. And then surprisingly, in 2015, 2016, it didn't die. Like that's the usual story with Bitcoin. So I started to pay more attention. And a lot of libertarians, after the Mt. Gox Silk Road collapse, started to wake up to the fact that it's here to stay, and there is actually there is some merit behind it, and it could actually be the fulfillment of our vision of the separation of money and state. So I've been on that path for, let's say, 7 years now. I dabbled in some altcoins, in some like nasty stuff. I got burned, so I became a Bitcoin maximalist after that. And so many like high quality books, podcasts, articles are being made in the past like 3 years that wasn't there like 7 years ago. So right now it's much more straightforward to people if they are paying attention to understand what Bitcoin actually means. And I want to be part of like the teacher on the side of Bitcoin. I'm always a student of Bitcoin, but I also want to, through my books, podcasts, conference talks, and stuff like that, to educate people about what it actually means, that Bitcoin is here, that it's here to stay, and what kind of problems it fixes. And as we probably discussed, it's more obvious for people, let's say in Africa or other countries than in Europe. But even people in Europe or United States need Bitcoin, even if they don't realize it yet.
Yeah, and they'll probably be the last to realize it because they're higher up on that scale of need, right? Or is it lower down on the scale of need? Yeah,
I would say depends on the country. There are, even in European Union or Europe, there are a lot of differences between the countries. Czech Republic and Slovakia is fairly Bitcoinized, I would say, bottom up. It's all bottom up. The establishment is no friend of Bitcoin. The central banks either don't care, which is good. That's how it is in Czech Republic, or they are openly hostile towards it, which is in our neighboring country, Slovakia. But the population partially gets it. Not everybody gets it, but I would say in Czech Republic, the portion of population that holds some Bitcoin or is in some way exposed to it is much higher than many Western countries. And there are multiple factors that cause that, and we can go into it if you want.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. Like, and also, what do you think the state's doing to try and counteract that narrative? You know, I mean, in Jamaica, they have CBDCs. I'm pretty sure Europe is trying to do the same thing. Like, how are they trying to, you know, get people to stay in that fiat system?
Right. So again, there are quite many differences in between individual countries. I can imagine European Union seems like sort of United States kind of thing if you look from outside, but from the inside, I feel like a Czech. I don't feel like a citizen of the European Union. Of course, it has some benefits, like you got this Schengen space, so you can cross across the countries without any border controls. But otherwise, I feel like a Czech. We have our own national currency, which I consider better fiat than euro. And for example, Slovak Republic, they have euro, so they have quite different circumstances. For example, as to your question, Czech National Bank, they have this stance: we don't care about Bitcoin. You can do anything you want with it, but don't come crying to us if you get scammed or anything, which is fine. which is that's a good approach, I would say. If there are like obvious scams, the police takes care, of course, but the Czech National Bank doesn't get involved. European Central Bank, that's a different story. They are openly hostile to Bitcoin, and they even published recently some kind of like study in quotes, because it's a hit piece basically, that Bitcoin is like destroying the environment, undermining the euro, undermining the legitimacy of the currency, and we basically cannot have that.
Yeah.
And of course, the ECB is working on the CBDC. The Czech National Bank doesn't have any such plans. And yeah, regarding Czech National Bank, I sometimes call it like my favorite national central bank, because they are actually quite enlightened about a lot of stuff. I know some people from Czech National Bank who understand Austrian economics, are quite libertarian, even understand Bitcoin to some extent, and they are not like this typical bureaucrat kind of person type. So if it stays like that in Czech Republic, I'm fine with that. But the danger to Bitcoiners in Europe comes from European Commission, European Parliament, and European Central Bank. Not so much in Czech Republic from our local government. What our local politicians do is there are taxes imposed on Bitcoin. It's 15% on capital gains, which isn't like too bad, because in Slovakia it's around 40% or something.
Wow.
It's crazy, because you have to pay capital gains plus social and security, like benefit payments, or how is it called?
Yeah, Social Security payments for retirees.
Yeah, but that's on like capital gains, right? It's totally nonsensical, and I don't think any other financial instrument actually has that treatment, but Bitcoin does in Slovak Republic, which is our neighbor. Not so.
It's like unrealized gains they're basically taxing, like gains that.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense. And for example, in Germany, our another neighbor from the West, they have a time test. So if you hold Bitcoin, I believe it's for 3 years, maybe even 1 year, you don't pay any tax.
Okay.
So the treatment, the tax treatment of Bitcoin across Europe is very different country to country. Of course, then again, like even if you consider tax treatments, I would have a problem living in Germany to undergo this time test, because then you have to have the KYC Bitcoin. Then you have to have like a receipt for when you bought the Bitcoin.
Right.
And I'm not a friend of KYC. I'm not a fan of KYC. So yeah, if maybe like some anecdote how it works in Czech Republic. As I said, a lot of people in Czech Republic have some exposure to Bitcoin and have quite a good understanding of Bitcoin. And the factors that influence that is Trezor, the company I work for, the original hardware wallet, that came out in 2013, so quite early on. That's 9 years ago now. And people around Trezor were always quite vocal about Bitcoin and what it means and how to secure it properly. Also, General Binds, the ATM company, is from Czech Republic. Slush Pool, the first public mining pool, is from Czech Republic. That's managed by Brains, which is a Czech company. And Paralelní Polis, I believe that was the world's first Bitcoin coffee. That's from Czech Republic as well, that emerged in 2015.
Bitcoin coffee. So, I think I heard that one before.
Yeah, Bitcoin Coffee in Prague.
Okay.
Yeah, and they host the Hackers Congress.
Okay.
So a lot of like Bitcoin infrastructure comes from Czech Republic, and a lot of Bitcoin education in our local language, in Czech or Slovak, was being done like 8-7 years ago, and it's become sort of part of the mainstream as well. We, as Bitcoiners, are sometimes invited to mainstream media. The journalists are quite informed already.
Yeah.
So in general, Bitcoin has a good uptake here, right? Which isn't the case necessarily in places like, I don't know, Belgium, UK. Like the approach to Bitcoin there is probably quite different from us. We understand self-custody, we understand privacy, and we understand, for example, why getting non-KYC Bitcoin matters. And we actually have an app launched by Satoshi Labs, the parent company of Trezor, recently that basically connects people that are interested in buying or selling Bitcoin privately. There is no ID involved. There is no escrow. It's just a way for people to connect. It's called Vexel. And
yeah, I definitely want to hear more about that too. That was pretty exciting when you told me about that one earlier.
Right, and so what I'm getting at is Czechs basically sort of get Bitcoin if they are willing to pay attention to it. And part of the reason is our monetary history. I always like to explain that whenever I'm talking about Bitcoin to Czechs, Slovaks, or anywhere else. Anyone who's willing to listen to boring Czech monetary history, but it's quite right, because in the past 130 years, we had 7 different monetary regimes, 7 different currencies.
Wow.
So roughly every 20 years, there's a new currency. And this is heart of Europe. This is like quite a civilized territory, right? There are places like where you would say, okay, this is like a volatile territory with some war going on.
War-torn country, yeah.
Yeah, but Czech Republic isn't, never was a war-torn country. But what happened is, first we had gold and silver coins, of course, under the monarchy until the First World War. After the First World War, the connection to gold was sort of severed. You could only exchange the banknotes in large denominations, like for a brick of gold, which no like ordinary citizens were able to because it's too valuable.
Yeah.
So the currency was still sort of linked to gold, and we had silver coins in 20s and 30s, but there was this gradual like fading out of gold.
Yeah.
Then the Nazis came in 1939. They occupied Czechoslovakia back then. And of course, they stole all the gold. Bank for International Settlement helped them in that very well. They aided them because the Czechoslovakian government back then was aware that this invasion is probably coming. So the gold was stored in London, in like the neutral place. And it was, in some way, I don't remember the details now, in some way it was managed by Bank for International Settlements. And when Czechoslovakia was occupied by the Nazis, they officially became the owners of the gold in London, and the Bank for International Settlements happily handed it over.
They gave, wait, the BIS gave the gold to Germany?
Yeah. To Nazis, yeah.
Wow.
And it took like 40 years then to get some of it back. Not all of it was returned, but some of it was returned. So that was the Second World War. A lot of gold was stolen from Czechs. After the war, there was like a provisionary monetary regime for like 3 years. Then the communists came to power in 1953. They did monetary reform, which was like a targeted liquidation of small entrepreneurs, small businesses, savers. Because if you weren't aligned with the Communist Party, you got an exchange rate of like 1 crown for 20 previous crowns. But if you were part of the Communist Party, you got like 1 crown for 10 previous crowns, right? There was this shenanigans with the exchange rate. So people were pretty much robbed again by the communists, by the other side of the spectrum. And then in 1993, finally, the current Czech crown emerged. So the current monetary regime has been here for 30 years. Right now, our inflation rate is about 20%. There are talks of adopting, there are talks of adopting euro, and that's what I always warn people about. Okay, so you are investing in some pension funds, you are trying to save in Czech crowns, but consider this history, and it's very unlikely that Czech crown is going to be here in 20 years, because that's just not how things are done around here. And people are usually like recipient to that because they didn't really think about that. People don't really think about stuff that happened more than 20, 30 years ago. And right now we are in quite a stable monetary environment, but still the inflation is surprisingly high right now. It was like 1 to 2% for the past decade. But
okay, now, I was going to ask why you thought that your currency was better than the euro, but if it's only 1 to 2%, then that makes sense.
It used to be fine. Like, it used to be a very low inflation currency. But now it's like everywhere else. A lot of money was printed, a lot of supply was restricted by the government lockdowns, stuff like that. A lot of money was handed out, and now the inflation is biting us in the ass. And people are finally paying attention to Bitcoin as a long-term store of value. It's kind of hard to argue for that in the bear market, but if you like explain it with this long-term perspective, both from like the past history and from the future expectations, people get it usually. Yeah.
Okay. And I can see how it's a much more relevant as a store of value for people in that situation. But how is Lightning understanding and Lightning adoption there in Czech? Like, do people consider it as a medium of exchange in any way? I know that's still really early in general for Bitcoin to be considered that, but is anybody using it to buy stuff, or is there any kind of circular economy happening there?
Right. So in Europe and US and places like that with fairly good like financial systems, Bitcoin is hard to understand as a medium of exchange. In places like Africa, it's quite obvious because you don't have PayPal, you don't have debit credit cards. A lot of people don't even have bank accounts. A lot of people cannot even open bank accounts. It's hard to get any cross-border payments across. In Czech Republic, everything works. Actually, Czechs are very, they love like these fintech stuff. I believe when Apple Pay was introduced here, it was one of the fastest uptakes in the world. Like everybody started using
immediately.
Apple Pay, whoever had iPhone. So we don't really need Bitcoin for payments. That's just a fact. But then again, people are quite technically proficient here. So Lightning is well known. Podcasters like me and the other podcasters are talking about Lightning. We do like BTC Pay server tutorials. Running your own node is quite popular in Czech Republic, and now you have these like Umbrels and MyCitadel, and there's even like a Slovakian project like putting all the infrastructure in one box. And Lightning is a big part of that. We even have like Lightning ATMs.
I thought there was only a one Lightning ATM that was out of Australia, maybe. I didn't know there was another company that made Lightning ATMs yet.
Yeah. Well, in Czech Republic, people are hobbyists. Like a lot of people like to DIY your own stuff. So We do have our own Lightning ATM, but it's not a business. It's a hobby project.
Yeah.
You can see it at the conferences, at meetups. It's called Bleskomat, which is Czech for like lightning mat. Blesk is lightning in Czech, and it works with coins, which is very cool because you can buy like 100 sets worth of Bitcoin. So it's perfect for onboarding people because they put in just £1, which is like a couple of cents, and so you don't lose anything, and you see that it works immediately, and then you can buy some stuff with it. We even have like a work in progress app for raffle, like tombola raffle. You know, when you're at a
like a lottery type thing, but a raffle.
Lottery, yeah. So you can buy like lottery tickets for Lightning when, for example, when you're at a meetup, and there are some prizes like a Trezor, some T-shirt, stuff like that, and it's a good way to explore Lightning and how it works. Also, there's a cool project. It's called Sheep Tangle. You can feed sheep via Lightning. There's a camera pointed at sheep.
Yeah. Kind of like the chicken one, right?
So, yeah. So Czechs do all kind of crazy stuff with Lightning, but we are more of a hobbyist than like a lot of these projects don't progress to like business stage.
Yeah.
And some marketing. But yeah, there's one project that comes to mind. That's Tweetoshi. That's a Twitter client that integrated Lightning, so that you can, instead of liking tweets, you can set tweet. So you can send some sets to Twitter, and it uses the same Twitter API that they have for Lightning. It's the Twitter API. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice.
No. I don't think it's the Twitter API for the feed.
But not for the Lightning payment.
Feed. I don't think for the Lightning payment. I think they did their own backend.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and I believe they won some pitch contest at Pacific Bitcoin recently. So yeah, that's an interesting project. Tweetoshi.
Yeah. I definitely remember hearing about from Bleskomat all the way to Tweetoshi. I see them all on Twitter all the time, the different videos or people showing off their little DIY projects. The space moves so fast. It's really hard to keep up with everything, you know? But in terms of self-custody, because that's kind of where your space is now, right? I'm guessing it's the same thing for people in the Czech Republic. They're very well aware of self-custody as, you know, the best way to hold their Bitcoin. Would you say that pretty much everyone who knows about Bitcoin probably has a hardware wallet there? Or do you think there are still bad practices?
Well, there are always newcomers coming in. So for people that have been around for a couple of years or that tend to do it properly from day one, they get a Trezor. And Trezor has a huge market share in Czech Republic because people love that it has like Czech support and stuff like that, and they tend to know the founders, Slash and Stick. Cool. But I can still see a lot of people in the Czech Bitcoin Facebook group asking about like Coinbase and Binance, and they don't. A lot of people don't really get it that this is not how you hold Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But then again, if they ask this question, there will be 10 people saying, just buy Trezor or just download this wallet, just get it out of the exchange, which is good. Like the environment in Czech Republic is quite good. And if somebody asks questions about Bitcoin, they will always get very good answers here.
That's good. And I can imagine that environment has gotten even better as people become more aware with all the different things that have happened, right? Like the FTX blow up and the BlockFi blow up, and then the even with Luke Dash Jr.
Yeah, that's right. And maybe it's true that Czechs tend to self-custody more because I don't recall anybody saying they got burned on BlockFi or FTX. I remember, or from time to time, I know a lot of people got burned on Mt. Gox. There are
Mhm.
like checks that, and maybe that's part of it because people in Czech Republic tend to see like the Mt. Gox stories from
Yeah.
time to time because as a lot of Czechs adopted Bitcoin early on, they stored it on Mt. Gox back then. So you can from time to time see these stories that I'm still waiting for my Bitcoin from Mt. Gox, not me personally, but a lot of people are saying that.
Yeah, I heard it a lot.
So, and I would say I hate Facebook for personally, but for Bitcoin in Czech Republic, it's a good asset
Interesting.
because the Czech Bitcoin community on Facebook, it has like maybe 40,000 people now, and the quality of the content is pretty high for such a major group.
Mhm.
You always get like a proper answer, proper resources, and if somebody is trying to scam people, recommend some shitcoins or shill some FTX affiliates, we just ban them, right? Because we know like what makes sense and what's nonsense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say the environment here is pretty cultivated. People tend to self-custody, and what's also quite common in Czech Republic is there are exchanges where you send them money and they send you the Bitcoin back. They don't custody the Bitcoin for you.
That's good.
And this has been the norm since the first exchange, the first Czech exchange came about in like 2012 or 13. So it's been normal for Czechs to not hold their coins on an exchange because the exchange doesn't actually offer the service. You just have to, maybe now there's Binance, of course, and the foreign exchanges, but the Czech exchanges from early on, they worked like, okay, so you want to buy some Bitcoin from us, what's your Bitcoin address? You give them the Bitcoin address, then you send them money, and you've got the Bitcoin within a few minutes on your address. So it's straight to self-custody.
How do they avoid the risk of chargebacks and the counterparty risk? Because if they're paying via bank transfer or Visa, there's a chance that they could claw that back, right?
Yeah. So for it's KYC'd. Like nowadays, it's all KYC'd.
Okay.
You can still buy non-KYC Bitcoin at some exchanges, but it's really tiny amounts. It's like $100 worth, and they just accept that risk. A lot of scammers target the exchanges. There are a lot of like fake phone ads where you send money to the fraudster, and you actually send your money to an exchange, and he gets the Bitcoin. So the exchanges are fighting against that all the time, and sadly, KYC is the most obvious answer to that.
Yeah, I could see that. It's a double-edged sword, because on the other hand, the KYC could be abused if the institute, the bank, or not the bank, the exchange becomes malicious. So yeah, it's a fine line to walk. I always try to avoid KYC if possible, but like you said, it's not the best solution. The best solution is usually a peer-to-peer exchange, but sometimes if you're going to do large-scale exchanges, KYC might be necessary. I still say no KYC all the time, though. That's always my default advice is no KYC. And then what do you think about mixing? And I call it mixing, but coin joins, collaborative spends. Yeah.
Well, that's actually where it might get tricky in terms of regulation. Mostly from the European Union, because it seems like they aren't really open to the idea of better privacy for Bitcoin. Already, the narrative that Bitcoin is used for money laundering and sanction evasion and stuff like that, that's being kicked around. We have seen that a lot when the war in Ukraine started. So everybody was talking about how Bitcoin will be used for sanction evasion. And I believe with CoinJoin getting more traction, this will be even stronger.
Yeah.
And for us at Trezor, this will be something we will need to tackle because we are implementing CoinJoin in Trezor Suite in, let's say, 2 or 3 months' time.
Nice.
Right. We are partnering with our friends at Wasabi. Wasabi are based in Europe. So yeah, it's our like common issue that we need to overcome to explain that Bitcoin privacy matters. It's not for criminals, it's for ordinary people. Because how I like to explain it is if I go to a merchant and buy something with my card or with a bank account or with the cash, they don't see how much money I actually have in my account or in my wallet if I use the fiat system.
Right.
With Bitcoin, this is not the case. With Bitcoin, if you use it naively, everybody can see in your wallet. Like if I spend from a wallet with one full Bitcoin and buy something for 100,000 Satoshis, the merchant sees I have one Bitcoin, which isn't comfortable to me. And we do not expect that from the legacy system. So why should we have this expectation from Bitcoin?
And it's worse than that, right? Because it's like they can see your one Bitcoin and they can see all the history of how that one Bitcoin got there too.
Mm-hmm. And going forward, they will see all your transactions. Yeah. So we should level the field and we should have more private Bitcoin. Like, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like you shouldn't like, let's say the law enforcement has some role in society. They are bad guys, right? And they should try to catch these bad guys and all that. But that doesn't mean you need to completely erase the privacy. That doesn't mean you need to have pull down the curtains everywhere and have totally transparent email accounts and stuff like that. So why should the financial sector be any different? Why should the work of law enforcement be done by banks and financial institutions and let's say virtual asset services providers, as they are called? Mm-hmm. Like let the judges and the police do their own work. Let them do the detective work. Let them maybe issue some court orders if it's applicable. But you cannot treat the whole society and the whole concept of privacy as some bad element, as something that's nefarious or malicious. That's just not how civilized society should work. And if we do that, if we accept that as the new norm, it's just a way for Chinese type of totality. And I don't think Europeans should sink to that level.
Yeah, because it's a rabbit hole or a slippery slope into your thoughts not even being private and then thought crime becoming a thing. There's a phrase by Eric Hughes that the joint market team always says, which is privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something one does not want the whole world to know, but a secret matter is something one doesn't want anyone to know. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world, by Eric Hughes. And that's so true.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you can't protect, yourself from if you're on the toilet, you don't want anybody to be watching you take a dump. That's private. That's not necessarily secret. So that's the way I like to explain it.
All right, I've got 8% battery remaining.
Oh shit! Okay.
I can find the socket. I forgot about it. Sorry.
What are we at? We're at like 47 minutes. Oh man, this has been a good conversation so far. Let me just get a couple more questions in. If you need to plug in, please do. But I guess I want to move to Trezor for a second, because I mean they've been a pretty, what do you want to call? What do I say? They've been a shining light in industry of poor quality and scams. Like I went through a lot of hardware wallets when I was first figuring out Bitcoin and figuring out how to store it. And I bought everything from the John McAfee scam wallet to, you remember that one? I don't remember what it was called. To like,
yeah, I don't want to remember.
My learning curve in terms of hardware wallets, everything from buying hardware wallets that were compromised upon shipping, from, scams like the McAfee scam to hardware wallets that were more focused on a lot of other altcoins versus actually just Bitcoin. And then ones that, didn't really have very good privacy practices, like the Ledger wallet that all of our information got hacked as soon as you bought it. So I'm really impressed with the way that Trezor has kept the quality and the reputation. And I'm wondering, how did you get involved with them? And, what do you guys have in the future coming up?
Right. So how I personally got involved is I knew Têtek for a couple of years. And when I started to be like more serious about Bitcoin, writing the book and just being more vocal about it, they said they actually need someone like that for Trezor to basically represent the company in podcasts, in media, at conferences. So that was the dream job, of course. Mm-hmm. And so here I am. And I would say the key to preserving the integrity and reputation of Trezor is the company was always founder-owned since day one until now. There is no VC, there are no VCs involved. It's all fully owned and controlled by the founders, by Têtek. And so you don't need to do any compromise regarding the vision and regarding like the user focus. So that's pretty solid. The company just works on reinvested profits, basically, for the whole 9 years. And this can be a little rough in the bear markets, but of course, since this is like a third bear market for the company, it's more sort of business as usual. Yeah. So the way it works is you make up a treasure war chest during the bull market. You don't spend like crazy during the bull market, and then you can overcome the bear market period without letting people go or without foregoing investments and such. And yeah, I would like to also mention Têtek and several other people from the company are behind the industry standards like BIP 39 for mnemonic seeds, BIP 44. I believe that's account hierarchy, and several other BIPs. The Shamir secret sharing was standardized by Trezor guys. That's SLIP 39. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it's an honor to work for the company, and I'm trying to keep the company on the right track because there are a lot of distractions, of course, compared to some competition. We are not focusing on Web3 or NFTs. We are here for Bitcoin.
That's good. That's good to hear. I mean, a lot of people see the shiny stuff and get distracted, even if they started in Bitcoin, unfortunately. Moving back to the Czech for a second, where do you see, and I know that Trezor will probably play a part in this and Slush and everything else that's there, General Bytes, et cetera, but where do you see the country moving in terms of Bitcoin? I guess what's the future with Bitcoin look like for the Czech Republic? I say that because I can think of what it looks like for El Salvador. I can think of what it looks like for Africa. And for the US to a lesser extent, because they're a laggard in this space. But where do you see Czech positioned in the next 5 to 10 years, for example?
Yeah, that's very hard. That's very hard for me to tell. I think like there's a portion of the population that simply gets it, that saves in Bitcoin every month, that isn't maybe too vocal about it, that understands it might be dangerous for them to be too exposed as Bitcoiners. And I believe there are quite a lot of people like that because the biggest Czech Bitcoin YouTuber has 90,000 subscribers, which is quite huge for like our little local language. So Bitcoin is pretty much mainstream here. And at the Czech Bitcoin conferences, you meet so many people and you see how huge it actually is under the lid. So I can see a part of the population being well shielded from anything that happens in terms of recession, inflation, government going bankrupt or anything. But Czech Republic isn't too bad off in terms of government debt. But yeah, things are deteriorating here as well. And the other part of the population that doesn't get it, that maybe thinks that Bitcoin is a scam or that they are too late and that we just got lucky, they will probably call for taxation, for some special taxation of Bitcoin, maybe even for confiscation. I am concerned about that in all the Western countries. And so there might come time that the Bitcoiners will have to leave these places for some more civilized places in terms of Bitcoin environment, which might be Africa, which might be Jamaica or Latin America, but
the citadels.
probably not be. Yeah, it won't happen in Western Europe or US.
Yeah.
So I would say, in general, I'm a very optimistic person. But in terms of how European countries evolve and how the governments perceive Bitcoin, how they approach the levels of debt and inflation and the pensions liabilities, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm kind of afraid if Bitcoin reaches, let's say, $1 million in 10 years, it will become a prime target for, you see, these people have all the money and you've got nothing. Go get it. That's what happens all the time throughout history. That's what the Nazis did. I'm kind of concerned about that, and I believe from personal perspective, it's good to consider the option that you might actually move out at some future point. And there are places that I think are more welcoming to Bitcoiners or freedom-minded people. But then again, the level of education in terms of Bitcoin is quite good in Czech Republic. Even the politicians are getting informed about it. Like I said, the Czech Central Bank is quite well informed. So I'm not too afraid of the Czech establishment as such, maybe more of the European establishment, which is always like this. For a lot of Czechs, we didn't accept the euro, and we are sort of like skeptical towards European Union. For a lot of us, it's like this huge boogeyman above us, like the European Union. They might impose their regulations on us, and it's sort of happening with MiCA. That's the markets in crypto assets regulation. That's making doing business in any kind of Bitcoin-related stuff much harder in Europe in general. And that's coming from Europe. That's not coming from our legislators.
Okay.
So Czech Republic is quite sane in their handling of Bitcoin, but European Union, they are the crazy ones.
Yeah, the final boss. Yeah, that's
the final boss. Yeah, Christine Lagarde. That's the enemy.
Yep. Okay, I got a couple more questions for you. The first one would be more around, I guess it's around your podcast. I know you have a big podcast in the Czech Republic. Can you tell me more about it? And what do you talk about? What are your guests like, etc.?
Right. So it's in Czech, and I've been running it for 2 years now. It's based on one-on-one discussions where we sit down in the studio. So it's like a Joe Rogan style of podcast. Nice. Okay. And the discussions can run quite long. Like the longest one was about 3 hours. And so I gradually invite all like the major figures in Czech and Slovak Bitcoin space. So I had Slash, for example. I had the founder of General Bytes, some lawyers that are focusing on like Bitcoin blockchain regulation and legal stuff. I have a lot of like hackers and people that are working on stuff like Bleskomat on the Lightning ATM. And at first I thought, okay, there might be like 20, 25, 30 people that are actually interesting in and are capable of going to podcasts and talking about Bitcoin in Czech. Right now, I have about almost 40 episodes, and I keep on meeting new and new Bitcoiners because new Bitcoiners are just emerging. Just recently, I met a guy who just sat down, and for 6 months he was writing a book about Lightning Network, and it's the best book about Lightning Network I've ever seen. Like, and he even did like beautiful graphics. He made the whole thing, like the whole professional book, and he's a developer. He has been playing around with Lightning and full nodes and stuff for a couple of years, and everybody was asking him about, okay, how it works, and he just sat down and wrote a perfect book. And right now, with our friends at Brains, we are publishing the book in printed format, hopefully. Right now, it's just an ebook, but it will be printed. And yeah, there are people like that.
That's amazing. Is that book already published, or is it
not yet? It's just in just an ebook form.
That's awesome.
But it's in Czech, and it's amazing how many like hidden Bitcoiners there actually are, and that is probably the case all across the world. Like the message is heard, I would say, by a lot of people. Not a lot of people are like explicit Bitcoiners, but a lot of people just do get it.
Yeah,
which is amazing to see, and yeah, and discussions with Bitcoiners are never boring. Actually, some of my episodes are not about Bitcoin even. I had a girl who she did professional horseback riding first, then she switched to MMA as a less dangerous sport because she actually she says you get broken bones from horseback riding all the time and concussions and stuff like that, and you don't get as much of it in MMA. and she's a Bitcoiner, and she's like a 19-year-old girl, and she's a Bitcoiner, MMA fighter, and I witness this all the time, that Bitcoiners tend to be very interesting people. So I get to discuss like diet, exercise, sports, business, investment, economics, history, and it's just Bitcoiners talking about various stuff. That's always interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's really cool to hear that people are also comfortable enough to come on podcasts and talk about it. Because before, I'd say probably 6-7 years ago, as a Bitcoiner, you didn't feel comfortable being in the public in general, right? So it's a nice change. That's the thing, and I'm looking forward to somehow translating your podcast and hearing it one day, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to learn Czech anytime soon.
Might be fun. It's probably not easy for you. Yeah.
Okay. The other question I have for you is around the Czech as a tourist destination, and I hate using the word tourist because I always end up going to all the tourist traps in the very popular places. But as a person that lives there, if I was to come, or anybody was to come and visit Prague or visit the general country, maybe go to the countryside, where would you recommend they go? What places would they want to see? What's beautiful about the Czech Republic?
Right. Well, Prague has this like beautiful aura of medieval city. Partly it's medieval, partly it's like there's like neo-Gothic churches everywhere. That's beautiful. And what I personally like most about Prague is the late 19th century architecture, the residential buildings. That's in Vinohrady and Vršovice, parts of the city. That's where I live. And the architecture, it's sound money architecture. like Seyfedin sometimes says. And I like to take photographs of the sound money architecture around the world, because you can really tell the difference if something was built under gold money standard, as was the case under Austro-Hungarian monarchy. That's before First World War. Me, myself, I live in a housing building that's from 1904, and it's just beautiful. And you can really tell the difference. Like, these people really built for hundreds of years, and it's beautiful. It still works as a good housing, and the layout of the rooms is good. The ceilings have proper height, and you have like these double doors. And from the outside, of course, it's beautiful. So this is not like the tourist trap type kind of thing. If you go to Vinohrady, just walk the streets. There are a lot of really good cafes around Prague. Czechs, especially from Prague, are really sensitive about the coffee quality. So you have a lot of nice cafes around here. And the architecture is beautiful. Just take a look around, look up, and you will see sculptures and like the facades of the buildings. It's all just beautiful art on the street.
The one thing that popped up to me when I did a quick search was the astronomical clock.
Yeah, that's the usual touristy stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it's beautiful. It's fine. If you have never seen that, I've seen that when I was like 5 years old. So it's not that interesting to me. But the whole Old Town Square, right? As I said, the Old Town Square and the surrounding areas, that's more like medieval and like 16th, 17th century. These low type of buildings, and that's fine as well. That's beautiful as well. There are beautiful pubs in these kind of buildings, and it has this like old time feels. And the new town, it's called New Town part of Prague. That's from like late 19th, early 20th century, where you have this beautiful architecture that I talked about. And both like the old Prague and the new one are like really worth visiting.
Okay, that's awesome.
Charles Bridge is fine. It's good to visit these places at like 7 a.m. so that nobody's around yet.
Just pass by really quick and then go spend my time in the old town or the new town. And
yeah, if you go to Charles Bridge at 7 a.m., it's going to be very beautiful. You have this view of Hradčany, of the Prague Castle. There's not going to be many people around. Vltava, the river, it's beautiful in the morning. There are swans swimming around the river.
Nice. Nature.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, man, this has been a great conversation. The last thing I'll ask you is, it's the usual question you ask a Bitcoiner at the end of a show. What do you want to tell people in terms of, Bitcoin, where we are today, what to expect, and, any kind of advice you have for Jamaicans, for people in Czech, for people around the world?
Right. I believe Matt Odell's "Stay humble and stack sats." That's always worth repeating. So stay humble, stack sats, but stack them in a hardware wallet, or if that's maybe too expensive for you and you don't have as much Bitcoin to secure, mobile wallets are fine. I recommend Moon or Phoenix or Green by Blockstream. These are all solid wallets, and I use them as well. But the main stash should be in Trezor, in a hardware wallet. And just adopt this long-term view. Go maybe read some Parker Lewis, Nick Bhatia, Seyfedin, and just understand this is here for a long run. You should consider Bitcoin as a savings tool, not as an investment or speculation. And have fun. Join Bitcoin Twitter, listen to the podcast, and maybe come to BTC Prague in June. There's going to be a huge conference. And
tell me about that.
That's btcprague.com, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. It's btcprague.com. And the ambition is to organize the largest Bitcoin gathering in Europe, larger than Bitcoin Amsterdam. The ambition is for us to have 10,000 people, and it's an international conference held in English. And why in Prague? That's because the first Bitcoin conference in the world happened in Prague in 2011. Max Kaiser was there, and he sometimes repeats that on Twitter, that I'm here in 2011 having a talk about Bitcoin, and that was in Prague. So this is sort of back to the roots. After 12 years, the largest Bitcoin gathering in Europe is going to happen in June in Prague. And in terms of advice for Jamaicans, I don't really know about the circumstances in Jamaica, but I believe the basics apply everywhere. Stay humble, stack sats, self-custody, take a long-term view.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the self-custody part. The Jamaican environment is very, I guess, risk averse. A lot of people don't trust themselves, and they always want to, custody it here, custody it there, Binance, hopefully, So I think that a really good piece of advice is learn about self-custody, take control of your own value, take control of your own time, take control of your own life. For sure.
I believe for people that are afraid of screwing up, Moon is probably the best choice, because I like how you have multiple ways how to back it up, and you can back up the wallet through a username and password, which is what people are accustomed to, and you can write down the seed, and there is some third option, I believe. So they really thought that through. So I would maybe advise, take the first steps, maybe with Moon, just with some small amounts, become comfortable with that, and then you can progress to a hardware wallet, then maybe to passphrase, then maybe a Shamir backup or a multisig. But the first steps can be done with just downloading an app for your mobile phone.
Yeah, great advice. And Moon is awesome. It's MUUN for people who are looking it up online, not Moon like the one in the sky, but UU instead of OO. And it's super easy to use. So download it and use it. You might like it. You will like it, I think.
Definitely.
Joseph, what an amazing convo, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. We'll be talking a lot more, but until then, my brethren, one love.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and I really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah, man. All right, take care.